Grandin is a woman with autism who has been advocating for people with autism since the mid-1980s by giving speeches and writing books. She took a stand against autism stereotypes, such as lack of communication, anger issues, and a more difficult time learning than the average student. She proved that people with autism can specialize in a certain area of work because of their different ways of thinking. Grandin leaves a legacy of improving the techniques used to educate children with autism through new laws and schools, as well as educating all on the positive aspects of autism. Autism is a mental disorder that is classified by difficulties with social interactions and language and the need for a schedule or repetitive behavior. Temple Grandin was born 4 years after Leo Connor, child psychiatrist, first proposed the idea of autism in 1943. Before autism had been identified as a disorder, there were institutions for people with autism-like behavior and actions. People with autism in these asylums were stereotyped and not given credit for their intelligence. Children with autism were removed from their parents because psychologists, such as Bruno Bettelheim, thought that it was the mother's fault that the child had autism. When Leo Connor started to study autism, he observed 11 children and saw that they all had difficulty coping with specific senses and with social interactions. After the information of Connor was published, there was still little change in the medical community. People with autism were still diagnosed with brain damage or other diseases when they should have been diagnosed with autism. Temple Grandin was diagnosed with brain damage when she was 2 years old, but when she was in her mid-teens, her mother read the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist by the founder of the Autism Research Institute, Dr. Bernard Rimland, and based on this, diagnosed Temple with autism. Grandin fit into the autism diagnosis because she didn't speak until she was 4 years old and had difficulty making friends and interacting with others. When Grandin was in high school, she spent the summer on her aunt's ranch in Arizona. It was there that she learned how well she could relate to cows. Like cows, she thinks in a series of images that flash through her mind. She worked with cattle on the ranch and through this experience learned that she wanted to become a scientist. After graduating from college, Grandin visited a slaughterhouse and seeing the harsh conditions there, decided to design a cow chute that would make the cattle more comfortable as they went through. After testing the chute, ranchers realized it made the cows more relaxed, made the process easier, and made the meat taste better. This invention gained Temple Grandin the attention from which to start to speak on autism.
I think it's really important people to show what they can do. When I did my original cattle projects back in the 70s, one of the things that motivated me, I wanted to prove I could do it. Just prove I could do it.
When professors, coworkers, and peers learned that Temple Grandin was on the autism spectrum, they immediately downgraded her abilities. Grandin grew up in her own lane and had a way of thinking that only she thought she could understand. In the mid-1980s, she started to speak in public on autism at the request of Ruth Sullivan, founder of the Autism Society of America, a leading grassroots autism organization. Because Temple Grandin had supporters from her successful career with livestock, the society thought she would be a good spokesperson. Grandin agreed because she was interested in autism advocacy and had a personal perspective on the cause. She was one of the first people to advocate for autism rights on a large scale. Grandin spoke to educate all people on what autism is. She spoke directly to people with autism, encouraging them to come out and accept being autistic. Although medical diagnoses had improved greatly in the 1970s, there were still many stereotypes about the actions of people with autism, such as the inability to get a job and career, succeed in school, and have a social life. In Grandin's speeches, she took a stand against these stereotypes and also supported early autism intervention and teacher assistance. She said that early intervention for children with autism would bring them support, so it would be easier for them to thrive with autism.
If we wait for a child to fall very far behind in their communication skills, their social skills, and their academic skills, then we're having to play catch up, and we'll probably never be able to achieve the outcome of getting them back on track with everyone else. But if we get it if we find it really early and we help them from very early on with the building blocks that all children need to be successful, we may prevent them from really falling ever very far behind everyone else.
In 1986, Grandin wrote the book Emergence Labeled Autistic to educate others on what autism is, what it means to be autistic, and what it is like to be autistic. In the book, she took a stand for the equal treatment of people with autism. Early on, even many doctors would immediately judge patients with autism based on their initial interactions with them because they didn't understand autism. Grandin was able to speak from the experience of working with cattle ranchers who had treated her badly because of the way she acted, and she used her example to eliminate these stereotypes. Grandin advocated for laws like the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990. This law required public schools to have special education programs that focused on the individuals with disabilities. Grandin encouraged people with autism to consider autism a benefit instead of a weakness. Shortly after the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990 became a law, the number of students with autism enrolled in public schools started to rise. Enrollment in special education programs went from none to more than 5,000 in 1 year. In the following year, that number tripled. The act also gave parents and students more input in their education and gave money to public schools for special education programs. Students with autism were able to get more support as individuals, not just as people with autism. But the act was also criticized. Many parents of students with disabilities complained that their children weren't getting enough attention from teachers. Also, there weren't enough teachers who were trained to work with children with disabilities to give them the extra attention needed to succeed. Some teachers would yell at students with autism or other mental disabilities or even take violent actions against them. But with time, many schools were able to give more attention and better teacher support to students with autism. This was a step away from discriminating against mental disorders and was a big leap towards autism appreciation.
I want to see kids that are different be successful. One of the things I think is one of the most important things for kids, ADHD, dyslexic, mild autism, is that they find something they can turn into a career.
Temple Grandin's public speaking and books, along with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990, which provided money for special education programs, inspired teachers and parents to explore new styles of teaching children with autism. Teachers were trained in early intervention and to teach through special verbal and sensory activities because of Grandin's knowledge in these areas. Because of Grandin's influence, people obtained a better understanding of what autism really meant. As of the end of 2015, many states had created committees to address autism needs and policies. New schools have since been founded, where the main focus is children with autism. The Temple Grandin School, founded by Jen Wilger, focuses mainly on children who have not met special needs services in schools but still require extra attention to learn. Because Grandin advocated for the education of children with autism, this school is an example of a community she influenced when she took a stand. Temple Grandin visited her aunt's farm where she found a connection to cattle, launching her into a career of slaughterhouse improvements. After gaining respect from her work with livestock, Grandin started to do speeches on autism, taking a stand against autism stereotypes and educating America on what it means to be autistic. She inspired parents and teachers to teach children with autism in a different style and advocated for laws such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990. Grandin still has many conferences and does speeches every year, working to improve the lives of people with autism. Temple Grandin gave a voice to people who never had a voice before.
I'm just a child of nature. I don't need much to set me free.